I'm Commander Shepard, and Oops All Movies is my favorite podcast on the Citadel.
Welcome back to Oops All Movies. This is episode 126. I'm Joe Woody.
I'm Neal Lewis.
And I'm Steve Park.
And joining us this week is indie game developer Xander Davis.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. We're going to do the Wolverine this week. So, since the other Wolverine movie, the Origins X-Men whatever movie, failed, they ended up making this again, which is kind of a reboot already. So what's another movie that deserves a second chance?
Well, if we're going by movies we've seen and reviewed on the show, one that I'd really like to...
We don't have to, but...
Right, I'm using that for my personal criteria. A movie that I'd really like to see more of the universe is In Time.
Oh!
The Justin Timberlake movie.
Yeah.
I like that answer.
It's a really interesting concept, and Steve and I both praise it for being a really interesting concept with really poor execution. So yeah, the world that was created was pretty interesting. I think there could be more told in that story, because really the open left it pretty open for a lot of other stories to be told past that.
Yeah.
So an interesting world that I don't think it'll ever happen in a million years.
No.
But definitely something that I think that it could be revisited for sure.
All right.
Yeah, I definitely concur with that. And I think my answer would probably be Fright Night, which of course was a remake of the 1980s cult classic Fright Night. I don't know. I just really enjoy that movie. I wouldn't mind seeing more stories told in that world with Anton Yelchin's character kind of at the center of it. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Oh, wait. So I misread this question then.
Okay.
Because I thought it was like a movie that should be rebooted again, not that we should see a sequel to.
Well, I think it both kind of apply, honestly.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good, all right.
And
Right.
so, yeah, Fright Night certainly is my pick. And I guess if I had to say an honorable mention, it would probably be Green Lantern. Although I kind of feel like we're already getting
superheroed out.
Well, I think we're already
Yeah.
kind of getting Green Lantern with Guardians of the Galaxy, right?
We're getting the Marvel version,
right?
yeah.
That it's going to kind of like scratch that itch. But but still, obviously, the first Green Lantern was a piece of crap. If they were to make a second one, I wouldn't complain.
Oh, man. Well, I'm going to go reboot.
Spider-Man?
Oh God!
Wait, is it really
Again,
Spider-Man?
And I would say Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, that's kind of a joke, but like they should reboot the reboot because that was kind of disappointing. Here's what I want to see. I want to see The Amazing Spider-Man where they don't do an origin story and they just keep going. Like, just tell a different story. It doesn't have to be an origin story that's like the exact same as the first one already.
Right.
If I would give a legitimate answer that's not really a joke, maybe I would say Oblivion.
Oh, good pick.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting universe.
Sure, fair enough.
How about you, Xander?
Well, kind of on that same beat of doing reboot / sequel maybe at once, and almost as a joke, Prometheus.
Oh.
No. I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
There you go.
Yeah, that movie was like the trailer. I lost my mind when I saw that, and it just was like, oh my God, this is going to be the coolest thing ever. And then it almost seemed like the movie was constructed for the trailer.
Yeah.
Like they just reverse engineered all these scenes they wanted to get in and these beats that just kind of were disparate and disjointed. And wow, what a disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
And but honestly, my real answer is The Matrix. I would like to see a continuity, but also a reinvention. It's been like 10 years now.
Yeah.
I'm still a fan of the Wachowskis. I love Cloud Atlas.
Yep, same here.
And I think that kind of after we've all gotten over that sort of mind-blowing, groundbreaking factor that the first Matrix had, where it kind of reinvented the action film. I mean, we had
I agree.
Like Charlie's Angels with having actors do kung fu fights. So it was just kind of like ridiculous for a while. And then CG has kind of matured. So now going to see movies, it's not about the CG. It's not about bullet time. It's about seeing a good story. I think we're starting to get there finally. And you can imagine anything and do anything and do it believably. So I would like to see the Wachowskis put put their noodles back to Matrix.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
The original Matrix is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, mine too.
Since we don't have a Bingsley, I mean, whatever happened last week and all that crazy shit, Neal, you weren't here. We don't know what happened.
There's kind of like a week-long hole in my memory. I don't know exactly what happened.
But yeah, so we had something go down last week, and we're without a Bingsley.
Correct.
Did we have any mistakes? Does anybody know?
Well, look,
we're kind of lost.
We are
without our Bingsley.
But I listened to the episode, and as far as I know, I think I'm going to call myself out, okay? And I think one thing that could be said is that, I said last week that we had never reviewed a horror film prior to The Conjuring, but I think one could say that Alien is a horror film. So
you could also say Cabin in the Woods is also a horror film.
That's
to an extent.
We're talking about straight up though. That's like a
horror.
Jokey comedy-ish type movie.
And I think kind of where I ultimately come down on this is that The Conjuring really is the first out and out horror film we've reviewed. I think Alien is sci-fi / horror. Cabin in the Woods, Fright Night, those are both comedy / horror. So I will stand by what I said to an extent that The Conjuring really is kind of the first.
Also, Alien's a retro review.
It was too. So I mean, it's not like that was a film that had been released in theaters and that we checked out. So, but I still felt the need to bring it up.
All right, Neal, what are the box getters this week?
All right, so at number 1 we have the Wolverine.
Hey, it's not a surprise this week. We didn't get a Despicable Me in there. We didn't get a Grown Ups 2.
Despicable Me's
a Turbo
still in there. Yeah, what the fuck is Turbo? Anyways,
well, this is really funny. This kind of feels to me like a situation where there was Final Destination and then The Final Destination. So that's what the X-Men franchise is doing now. They had Wolverine, and now they're just the Wolverine.
Yeah, well, to be honest, X-Men Origins, not X-Men Origins.
Yeah,
is X-Men Origins Wolverine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that movie is non-canon.
Yeah.
Moving on, number 2 is The Conjuring.
Oh,
I'm glad to see it sticking around.
Yeah. Number 3 is Despicable Me 2.
There it is again.
All right. Congrats.
Number 4 is Turbo.
Okay.
I don't remember talking about this movie at all.
Well, you weren't here last week.
In the trailer, there's a scene where Paul Giamatti, as a snail, tells the young snail protagonist, "A snail cannot race in the Indy 500." And I'm thinking, yes. Why am I watching this?
Yeah. By the way, I saw about 15 seconds of that film this week because
you went in the wrong theater.
Yes, I got my ticket and I walked in. I was supposed to go into theater 6 and I accidentally went into 5 for some reason, and it was Turbo. It'd be, I walked in when the trailers would be going. So it took me a while to register. Oh yeah, this is Turbo. I need to get the hell out of here.
You just slink out of the theater.
Yeah.
Well, the weird thing about Turbo is it feels like Fox is just throwing their name in their hat, except they're 4 years late to the race.
This is
with
Fox?
Cars. Yeah, it's released by Fox.
Okay.
So they're oh, Cars. You know that thing that happened in planes? Also.
Yeah.
Let's do things racing.
Yeah.
Because that's popular.
Let's do A Bug's Life plus Cars.
It's surefire hit.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it looks so terrible. And you've got there's big names in it too, which is really depressing.
Well, there's always big names in those movies now.
Yeah, I guess. Anyways, rounding out the top 5, we have Grown Ups 2.
Oh, jeez. Where's Pacific Rim?
It's at number 7 and beat out by Red 2.
Oh, that sucks.
I agree with a lot of what you guys said about how it's basically a live action anime, and I've been dying for that since I was, a kid. I'm so happy about it.
Since 15 years ago, they announced a live action Dragon Ball Z, and then what we got on screen was the worst thing ever.
I did not see that.
I haven't seen either, but
Resistance, yeah. No, but I've been waiting for kind of a Neon Genesis adaptation. I've been waiting for an Akira adaptation. I know there's a lot of controversy with the whitewashing, and I think that Warner's strategy now is to just come up with their own IPs. So this was Neon Genesis, but they decided to just do their own IP so that they could do whatever they wanted, have whatever cast and actors that they wanted, not beholden to the original and all of the fan rage that would inevitably ensue.
Yep.
Anyways, that is the Box Getters of the Week.
All right, well, like we said, we're going to do not X-Men Origins The Wolverine. So what's this one about?
Summoned to Japan by an old acquaintance, Wolverine becomes embroiled in a conflict that forces him to confront his own demons.
All right, let's roll the dice. Describe the movie in that many words, Neal.
God damn it. 1.
That's a tough one, yeah.
Good.
Okay. That's it.
It's, 1. I mean, yeah, good.
Oh shit, 6. Oh god, I may not say 6 words this whole episode about this movie.
Oh, jeez.
It's like Return of the Jedi.
I don't know on any level what that could possibly mean.
Can't wait to hear you expand on that later.
Oh, guys, I will.
I was relieved
All right.
by this.
Do you piss your pants?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay.
I didn't want to miss any of it, so I didn't.
Unwillingly relieved.
Yeah, so I didn't get up and use the bathroom. And
were you wearing a diaper?
no, what I really meant was it wasn't X-Men Origins. Basically, it was better than that. Right?
I think that's a not an invalid fear to have.
Xander, go ahead. We'll roll for you.
All right.
2.
Split personality.
That's kind of deep.
All right.
Well, yeah. This film was directed by James Mangold.
Interesting choice. Not the first choice.
Yeah, not the first choice. Of course, Darren Aronofsky was attached to this film for a long time. Ended up dropping out when he decided that moving his family to Japan or wherever they were filming at would just be too much of a strain. Mm-hmm. And so then he kind of dropped out of it because of that. And Mangold stepped in, and Mangold, at least to me, is I kind of best know him for Walk the Line, which I think is probably one of the better biopics that has been made.
Fantastic movie.
It really is. And Mangold, this guy, he's a real filmmaker. I mean, if you look at his filmography, he is totally competent. I mean, he's made some good pictures, and he's made 3:10 to Yuma. He directed Night and Day, so he's not a stranger to the action genre. I mean, maybe he was, before Walk the Line, because prior to Walk the Line, he had done primarily dramas. But after that, with again 3:10 to Yuma, Night and Day, it seems like he's kind of like experiencing this like mid-career renaissance, kind of like Mark Forster is. And of course, Mark Forster, who directed Quantum of Solace and then directed World War Z, he's a guy who really hadn't directed many action films prior to those.
Doesn't have a real action identity,
right? He's not a very good action director.
And you would think, in theory, a dramatic director transitioning to action would be very much welcomed, to have somebody to bring substance to an action film,
which is generally a substanceless,
Exactly.
Well, so it's not just freaking X-Men Origins. I mean, that's what we're saying.
Right.
No,
exactly.
Xander, I think that is a great point. And, I don't know if we necessarily see that here or not. It's certainly to a greater extent than we do in X-Men Origins Wolverine, where Gavin Hood really was just making a straight up action film. And there's really no other layers to that movie.
As many explosions as possible. Pretty
much, yeah. I mean, that film did kind of feel like this.
They like shoot a missile into a barn, and he does a wheelie out of it on a motorcycle.
Yeah,
there should have been like unicorns flying out of it too.
And then he sparks the ground with his claw and blows up a helicopter and walks away in slow motion.
Right.
That's cool.
So many action.
That sounds cool.
Right. It sounds cool. That really is the key phrase there. But and that's kind of why people are kind of afraid about Ender's Game, because Gavin Hood is directing that or has directed that, and so who knows how that movie will turn out. But yeah, I guess the one thing I will say then, because kind of going along with this whole thought process is that yeah, I mean, one would think that having a drama director helm an action film would indeed be a good thing, and that a guy like Mangold would be able to imbue a picture like the Wolverine with some good dramatic elements to it. And I don't think it quite gets there. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that he has done it perfectly in 3:10 to Yuma. I think that's probably the best modern Western we have.
It might be, yeah.
So yeah, I think he has done it before. I think this is much more action oriented than 3:10 is.
Yeah.
So it definitely skews more towards the action side as opposed to the drama side.
Certainly at the end.
Yeah, at the end it gets kind of dumb.
And that's my real whole issue with it. And I don't know if I can talk about the end yet, or
we'll probably do spoilers at the end. But...
The very.
I'll just say that I basically felt like James Mangold wanted to make, like, kind of like we were saying before, a film, and then at the end he was making a movie.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, that's when the boardroom came in and said, "Hey, you need a big robot.
Where's the explosions
climax?
There are some more explosions."
Yeah, it got a little weird, but
right there were some really, really great action scenes. I think the one that's kind of that you saw a little bit in the trailer, the action scene where he's on top of the train.
I thought that was going to be so ridiculously cheesy.
Yeah,
and it was good.
Right. It was good. It was probably the best on top of a train scene I think I've ever seen.
And it was really unique because I just for whatever reason recently watched what was the James Bond movie. Or no, I'm sorry. Take that back. It was Mission Impossible that I was watching.
Yeah.
That has a pretty lengthy on top of a train battle.
That's the classic. That's the original. The gold standard.
Yeah, that is the gold. And I would say this is much better than that. It's much more interesting, like kind of.
It's also like 25 years after or something, I don't know.
Right. And this kind of reminded me for whatever reason of if you played the game Battletoads. There's some scenes where you have to like jump over and duck and dodge things, and that's exactly what it reminded me of is Battletoads.
I loved it.
Mangold's cinematography was something I noticed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I think it certainly calls attention to itself, not necessarily in a bad way, but you're right. I don't think in a bad way. You do certainly notice it.
Yeah, I mean, in a good way. Like there's a shot where Viper throws I think it's her father, out of his office into the sort of courtyard. And the camera kind of dollies with him, and he kind of tumbles out, and there's ninjas standing, and it's like reds in the foreground and blues in the back. And it was like a 3-second shot. But I was just like, it was that moment where it like, oh my God, that is a cool shot. Like, and that's kind of stuck with me ever since. And there were a lot of moments like that, and sort of the way that they especially framed Tokyo as they were moving through it.
And you know what? You bring up Tokyo, and I've seen some people having problems with them not utilizing, nighttime Tokyo with all the neon and stuff like more than they did. I say
like in like most recently we saw in I guess it wasn't Tokyo. But in
you're talking about
James Bond.
Well, Skyfall, yeah.
But that wasn't Tokyo, that was
Hong Kong or something.
Hong Kong.
Well, in Inception, they were in Tokyo for like 5 minutes, and you barely saw any of it.
Yeah, but people have been saying like they had a problem with that it wasn't just a bunch of nighttime neon in Tokyo, and like that's the way that you're introduced to Tokyo, and I like that. Like, okay, yeah, I've seen this. Okay, I get it. Tokyo, yeah, we're here, and then they travel around Japan, and they're in Nagasaki and some other places, and I liked that. I like that it wasn't. I mean, we've seen nighttime neon Tokyo before, like
I thought it was
beautiful.
Refreshing to show it in the day and to move through it with kind of a wide lens, low angle, and so you kind of, it was almost like the city was as much of a star or a character in those shots.
We haven't really seen that, especially like an X-Men movie before.
It's
way
exactly
different.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of where Mangold is trying to make more of a movie, more of a film where it's sort of like this real person, Logan, is moving through Tokyo right now,
Right.
And it all being in neon, and it all being kind of cliche and expected.
And fighting on top of a freaking nuclear reactor. Isn't that cool?
What?
Origins.
Oh, right. Well, yeah. Well. Anyways, we're kind of on the subject of Tokyo and Japan in general. One thing I kind of found refreshing is there wasn't a lot of xenophobia in this movie.
Oh yeah, where he just like doesn't understand.
Right.
Like,
Well, I mean that happens a lot when an American film is set in a foreign land. There's a lot of like xenophobia and they're weird because they're different.
because they bow.
Yeah, and just like things like that. And there were some of those, conflicts
Lost in translation type stuff.
Right.
yeah,
But they weren't making fun of it. It was just like he's out of his element.
Right. There was kind of like a kind of in-between scene where they had the theme hotels, and that was kind of like a little bit zany. But it wasn't
that would be silly no matter what country. Though.
Right, because there are those in the U.S. as well. It's
Yeah.
not like that's a completely unique situation. But I really, really like they didn't play the Japanese up to be like some weirdos. And there's a lot of moments where it just felt like a normal any town anywhere. Like it felt like a modern country.
Loved it.
It didn't feel like, stuck in this deep tradition. It didn't feel like, we were just seeing,
It was kind of like a globalized perspective. Like, yes, it's Tokyo, we get it.
Right.
It's part of our community as a one world, type thing. Right. So it's like, we're just in Tokyo.
Yeah, and exactly. I mean, there were some, Japan is heavily, they do have a heavy tradition, and there was some of that in the film. And that was like a heavy, theme of the story, but it wasn't like bigoted and xenophobic, which it easily could have went that way.
And on that note, I'm really glad they casted appropriate actors for the roles, especially authentically Japanese actresses. I'm glad, like, for example, it wasn't Lucy Liu as Mariko, and Lucy Liu was like born in Queens, I'm glad it was not that. And the Japanese actors did a great job, actually acting. Like I took them seriously as actors, and in both languages. They did phenomenal job hooking us into the emotions of the characters. Yeah. When Yoshida emerges out of the well and looks at Nagasaki completely nuked, like, I immediately felt such sadness for him in that moment. And when he's down in the well and he gives the sword, like, all of those things felt so genuine and not disingenuous at all.
Yeah.
It really captivates you as an audience member. It draws you in because these are characters that care about each other and they're driving the story. Yeah. It's not about the bomb, it's about Logan saving him.
Yeah. And also, we've seen it in the trailer, so we know that the bomb goes off and that he saves the guy down in the well or whatever. When he heals from that experience, that is amazing.
By the way, speaking of Hugh Jackman, all I could think about while watching this movie was if they make a Metal Gear Solid movie.
I've said that before. Like, Hugh Jack, I've been saying that since like circa X2 or something. And yes, he is absolutely my pick for Snake.
Anyways.
Well, Solid Snake was based on the NES cover, which referenced Michael Biehn from Terminator. So we could just get like a trainer for Michael Biehn. And, just get him right in there. Full circle.
He'll play Old Snake.
Michael Biehn, who's, I think I saw him working at a gas station before I came here.
Wow, in Fort Wayne.
I want more of Michael Biehn. He's cool.
Yeah.
Well, he needs old Jim Cameron to kind of bail him out because they are, like James Cameron does have this like weird affinity for Michael Biehn. We'll put him in his movie, so I think that's kind of what he needs here. But, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we have kind of talked about the actors a little bit here, and I think it is a good performance by Hugh Jackman.
He is Wolverine.
He is Wolverine. Like, just as much.
He's too tall and good looking.
Well, no, screw that. But just as much as Downey is to Iron Man. I think just as much so for Wolverine and Hugh Jackman.
And it seems like Jackman is almost more possessive of the role than Robert Downey Jr. is at this point, because it sounds like he would almost be okay at some point with stepping away from the role. I think this is something that Jackman wants to keep doing as long as he possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that is certainly something to kind of point out as maybe
it's kind of his defining career role, I'd say, at this point.
Well, it's really funny because both the roles of Logan and Tony Stark kind of have the same place in the careers of Hugh Jackman and Robert Downey Jr. because Hugh Jackman, it's what made him a star, and with Robert Downey Jr., it's what made him a star again.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are very important roles for them, and so that also is kind of an interesting parallel between both of these characters. But no, Hugh Jackman's great. There really are a few things as fun as going to the movies and watching Hugh Jackman play Wolverine. Is whether or not that's kind of independent of the quality of this film, but he is good in the role, to be sure. And just God, I mean, I don't know how old he is at this point, but to get in the physical shape that he did, I mean, I think this is the best shape he has ever been in, and he was already in good shape whenever he played Wolverine. But in this, it really is kind of like almost not quite to the same level as like Dwayne Johnson in Fast Five, right? But it is quite a staggering physical transformation, to be sure.
Oh, dude, the veins in his arms.
Yeah,
it was almost Stallone-esque at times.
He's 45. Well, he's 44. He'll be 45 this year.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I hope I
Still
look
looking
like
good.
that.
Yeah.
Well, don't we all?
Yeah.
Don't
Anyway,
we all?
Kind of getting onto some of the other performances. One that I want to touch on that I thought that really hurt the film
Okay, we'll probably all agree with this.
is Svetlana.
Svetlana?
Yes.
Svetlana.
Yeah, Svetlana.
Yeah.
The Russian who played the other mutant girl.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny that her name is Viper. This is like the most video game riddled review we've had. I guess it's fair enough that you're on the show this week.
Yeah.
But literally, Viper looks like Viper from Street Fighter.
Oh,
really?
okay.
Like the Street Fighter 4, yeah, like literally, except for her hair being blonde instead of red, like in the game. But like, it's funny because even before I knew her name was Viper, I was like, oh man, she looks familiar. I can't remember where it is, but she just looks like a video game character to me.
Yeah,
so.
I don't want to write her off. I as an actress, I think the role itself was kind of generic.
Yeah.
It was she's woman as temptress. That's like 101 hero's journey. And what do you do with that except cast a hot Eastern European woman?
But
so
I know, but it was just so below this movie. Like,
yeah, exactly.
it was just, hey, we need to add an extra mutant in there.
Basically, I feel like she was just Uma Thurman and Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
No,
as
literally.
Poison Ivy.
Right, yeah,
compelling.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, except less compelling. No, I totally agree.
No back credit cards in this one, though.
Yeah,
I would say it's slightly, less cheesy than that. But
it's
yeah,
not,
I mean, come on, we
not
didn't get-
by much.
but it is cheesy. I mean,
Absolutely.
in this, I mean,
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
It doesn't fit. Like this is a very serious
Grounded
movie,
Yeah.
and like
It's kind of like how we were saying how like the first 2/3 of the movie are trying to be grounded, like you say, and then yeah, you have this kind of ridiculous character with a lizard tongue who basically sneezes at her enemies and gives them facial herpes. I guess.
Yeah, and then can blow on them and cure them like the Jesus. So.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
it was a puzzle piece way out of place.
It really
Sort of banging
was.
around hole.
But also, she's wearing like a superheroine like costume in this with like the bright green getup that she had going on. And like, what? Like, no one else is wearing their superhero suits in this. Like, this is post X-Men.
Logan certainly isn't in yellow and blue in this.
No,
I mean,
Yeah.
he's just
even in like the leather costume.
he's
X-Men
yellow and black or
dressed
brown,
kind of
yellow.
normal. So I mean, again, even her attire kind of speaks to her being like this mustache twirling,
it's just really out of
antagonist.
place.
And frankly, a part of the film that really didn't work for me, and it's a big part of the film, is all of the Japanese family drama and business scheming. None of that really grabbed me at all. I felt all of that was pretty deathly dull. And
and you.
I did not fall asleep during this movie, but I came awfully close, and that certainly is.
I looked over. Yeah, I looked over at one moment, and you were like, your eyes were like almost shut, and then like a loud noise happened, and it
Jolted you
probably
sprung you back to life.
Oh, right.
I love that. I'm actually. I thought it was just for a comic book film. I thought it was refreshing to be in that setting and in the middle of that drama, and it almost felt anime-ish, which I was kind of on board with, especially after Pacific Rim.
Yep.
I'm a fan of like Beat Takeshi's films. Outrage is on Netflix. It's awesome. It's a recent one. And it's just kind of that whole vibe of being in Tokyo, dealing with Tokyo politics, namely family politics. it was just kind of like, I think the whole Tokyo experience as a package was, you had to have the sort of Japanese family business and drama, and of course the son is a police chief, and all of that. Like, that's kind of like requisite.
Right. The only thing we were saying you're missing is some drifting, some Tokyo drifting.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, with
Tokyo hot dog.
And
you got the pachinko machines in there. So.
Yeah, we did
exactly.
get the pachinko machines.
And again, like, back to what I said with, like, there's not enough recognizable Tokyo scenery in this. Well, how about that? Like, that's
pachinko parlor.
Exactly. But I'd have to say, with like the whole family scheming stuff, like, I thought it was a bit confusing at times.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
She's gonna get the will or whatever, and no, I put a hit out.
It was a bit soap opera.
It was very melodramatic.
Yeah, soap opera. Yeah, melodramatic.
I thought there were
anime.
Right.
Yeah, I thought there were a few too many moving pieces. I think it could have been simplified and accomplished the exact same thing.
Yes, I agree.
But I overall, like, the fact that that's in the movie, I didn't have a problem with it, and I liked that change of pace, and it was refreshing. But I think it could have been done a little more efficiently, I think.
Yeah, it did give the story time to kind of cool down and just go to more of a drama piece as opposed to a straight-up action movie. I mean, it's like a Jason Statham starred.
Frankly, I don't think the film's pacing really supports any of those story beats at all, because I think the film's pacing is one of its biggest failings. It really fails the story. We go from that funeral fight scene, and I was shocked when not that long after that we have the fight atop the train. I'm like, oh, so this is actually going to happen right now. And
I hadn't seen the trailer, and when that happened, I was just like, oh, okay, we're doing the Mission Impossible thing now. Okay, all right.
Right. I mean, frankly, and I think the film would have been better served to, give us that funeral fight scene. Then, let us catch our breath for more than it ultimately does allow us to catch our breath. And then, peaks and valleys, and then put in that train scene a bit later on. So I think the film, there are problems with the film's pacing kind of throughout. That is the biggest instance of it for me that really sticks out in my mind, is kind of being bad.
I will say that near the halfway point, the movie kind of lost its way a little bit. I did actually look at my phone just to kind of, because I kind of had lost time apparently. But near the middle, it does there was a stretch lose its way.
Yeah.
So
one thing I think we should get to prior to the spoiler section is, like, the fact that Jean Grey is in this film, and whether or not one can enjoy this as a standalone film.
Oh yeah. I would say yes. I would say that it is a standalone film. I think it does a pretty good job as a story within itself. I think there is enough of a character arc for Logan, and I don't think that it's just kind of an unnecessary build-up movie, that says, here's what's coming next, or, stuff like that. I think it does work. I do.
Yeah. I can barely remember the first one, the first X-Men film, to be honest.
Long time ago.
I've seen all of them.
Yeah.
The only one that really matters in my brain is X-Men First Class.
Okay.
Which, like, Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, Kevin Bacon with Jennifer Lawrence, Katniss Everdeen. I mean, and then it's set in the 60s.
Yeah.
It obviously was not a movie made for an agenda. It was a movie to take these characters and do something interesting with them. Yeah. And so that's why that movie really just, like, that's the only thing I remember. So before that, I mean, the original X-Men trilogy, they were kind of trailblazing. The first X-Men was kind of the first superhero film I could take seriously.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
And I distinctly remember thinking that, but it's sort of like so many superhero films have happened since then.
Basically X-Men and Spider-Man really kicked off this modern revival of superheroes.
Yeah, and so now it's like, with this, honestly, I was coming in pretty much a blank slate. And I've seen all of the films.
Okay, you remember like what happened though in X-Men 3 with like Jean and everything though, right? Like you at least got that. Oh,
I don't.
Really?
I remember Cyclops getting really pissed by the lake, and he took off his glasses.
Yeah.
And I think I remember that from the trailer.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
That's all I
That's
remember.
it.
That, and I remember like them in a house and like it turning upside down or something. Or...
It lifts up in the air.
Okay,
but yeah.
well, yeah, that-
Okay,
and, like-
well, this is very important then for Xander. So that Jean Grey beat, since you have no recollection of that, did it work for you?
So I got within 5 seconds of seeing her in bed with him in the first 10-minute opening of the movie that, okay, this is who he cares about. And I remembered she obviously was an X-Men. I remembered that they had that connection. I didn't remember her dying.
Okay.
And so I didn't really know what was going on, but they really cleverly communicated all of that backstory.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, very succinctly, very efficiently, and it's like I got it. I don't remember and I don't need to know anything that happened before this.
Yeah.
To get the emotional toll on Logan that's going on right now.
It's just
and
a
that's
person
what matters.
it's just a person from his past that is dead now and he's dealing with that.
Or
Yeah.
and frankly, I would contend that maybe she's not even dead, and she's kind of on this like other plane.
Astral plane.
That's kind of what I would contend. I think the film kind of supports that actually.
I didn't think
do
of
believe
that.
as well.
Yeah, I agree with that though. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of my opinion, is that
Yeah.
she exists on some other alternate plane, which would be a very comic booky solution to bring her back.
Right.
Because, well, we'll save the spoilers for the spoilers section, but...
But either way, I think that was done well. I mean, there are certainly no, flashbacks to The Last Stand where it means that certainly...
Or Archangel's ripping off his wings. Or
Right,
something.
and another director certainly may have made that choice.
Well, the Avengers has that. The Avengers has like Captain America flashbacks to that other movie.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that certainly could have been in this movie, but Mangold decided not to go that route. And frankly, I think that Jackman and Famke Janssen are both such good actors, and they can, with their performances, suggest this entire history, an entire relationship with their performances without us needing to see any of those previous things. I mean, it did really feel to me like, and I've talked about it on the show before, I mean, The Incredible Hulk, not the greatest movie, but one thing that is great in that movie is the relationship between Edward Norton and Liv Tyler. And the way that they're able to suggest this entire history between their two characters without us ever seeing that history. And I feel
it's almost like we talked about, like, can we please not have a reboot of Spider-Man with another origin story?
Right.
It's almost like through osmosis at this point. Everybody, after like 15 years of superhero films now, we should be gathering at least enough to just get on with it.
We're now born with the innate knowledge of the Spider-Man origin.
Pretty much, yeah. And this is kind of the same way. I mean, Xander, I totally agree, where it's like, we kind of know innately that Wolverine and Jean Grey have a thing for one another. And I like that the film just kind of picked up the torch. Picked up the torch and ran with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Before we go into spoilers, I just want to give my cinema experience. I kind of teased it a little bit on Facebook right before we started recording.
Here we go.
But I had to do something I've never done before.
Oh, God.
For Xander, you probably haven't listened to our huge backlog, so you may not know this, but I have a history of having terrible cinema experiences.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure.
Where it's gone from me being almost knocked out by people's body odor to children being brought to like a midnight showing of movies to literally a like infant pre-1-year-old being brought to Fast Five.
Well, we were there for that.
You were there for that. But
and
anyways,
being put right in your lap. Can you hold this for me?
I mean, it pretty.
I want to eat my popcorn.
Anyways, I have a very poor movie experience, and on several occasions I've actually yelled at people in the theater.
And it's embarrassing.
Yeah, this time it got to a point where I had to tell an elderly group to shut up. And I
because they didn't understand what was going on.
Well, here's the thing. It's like I like it's funny because like normally you think, oh, it's the young kids that are so disrespectful.
Yeah.
In my experience, it's not. It's the older generation that is worse. And
They're just out of it.
Yeah,
they don't know what the hell, where they even are.
Yeah, and the thing is like, at first they're talking. It's kind of funny. Oh, old people. The movie's just beginning. They'll figure it out and be shut up.
They'll figure it out.
Well, the thing is that they weren't just like whispering to each other. They were just talking in like normal conversational voice.
Oh yeah, Bill. Oh
and
yeah.
So, yeah, no, it literally was like that. And like they would say things like after like, "Oh man, he's got his shirt off for a really long time,"
God.
or like where she like,
why does he have knives in his hands?
yeah, or like the scene where she's like, oh, where the acid was on that one guy's face, like, oh, that's really gross.
Yeah,
like. Or like when Jean Grey. Oh, why is Jean Grey in this movie?
Oh, so they knew that.
Yeah, that kind of that did actually kind of surprise me.
Okay,
but anyways, like I literally looked at them. Like first, I just kind of did like a half look. I didn't really look back, but I knew that they would see me kind of making that motion.
That's phase one of the war.
Right.
Yes.
Second phase was actually like just do a quick look back. Nothing big, but just like that was it. And then I thought, okay, that's a pretty big.
And then you gotta kind of do like the.
Well, okay,
right.
that's well, no, I didn't do it that time. I just quickly like turned my head and turned right back. Third time was lock eye contact with them. So I knew that they were talking. The fourth time, then they just, they didn't get the fucking hint. So the fourth time, I literally I kind of like lift out of my seat, look at them, and then it made like, and then turn back around. They still didn't get it. The fifth time, I literally looked at them and said, shh, stop. And then turned back around.
That's polite.
Yeah, but like still, like the fact that it got to that fucking escalation is absolutely ridiculous. And they still made one more comment even after that. Like it's like, oh Jesus Christ, take your fucking die already, Jesus.
Die like Mr. Yoshida.
All right, you want to do spoilers and then wrap it up?
Spoiler time.
We don't have a Bingsley, so we can't give you a timestamp. But if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to hear spoilers, this is our spoiler section. So turn it off or try to fast forward or whatever. But you've been warned. So
basically, I think kind of one of the this is my opportunity to explain my dice roll thoughts.
Oh right. Okay.
When I made
let's say Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. When I made my Return of the Jedi reference, because to me, the entire climax of this film is just James Mangold processing Return of the Jedi. I can certainly envision. A young James Mangold watching Return of the Jedi when it hit theaters back in the day, or perhaps when it came out on home video. And to me, the entire climax of this film, which is kind of built around this whole like silo type thing, right? And characters they're continually falling down the silo. The Viper character certainly does.
Okay.
And it got to a point where this happens so often. One of them hits rock bottom. Literally there at the bottom of the silo. Yeah. I thought she would end up by the Emperor's rotting corpse.
Okay.
So there's just this visual of characters that are just falling down the silo again and again and again, and then. Additionally to that, you've got this scene of this old dying man in this suit. You see the suit, you see the silver samurai throughout the climax, and you kind of just accept that maybe it's a robot or something to that effect. Right. You don't think someone's in the suit per se.
And I'm glad that there's a person in there. Seeing it in the trailer and it makes this like Transformers like noise, and oh god, why are they putting a robot in there? But
Yoshida was the Silver Samurai.
It would have been better if like
everybody, had to see it coming that he wasn't really dead, especially since the prophetic character said she couldn't see his death.
Right.
So very early on. So
right.
Now this is kind of where I'll explain kind of my split personality for my role. Like the first half of the movie, kind of, a lot of screenwriting and storytelling is laying down cards for later to turn over. And I felt like throughout the first 2/3 of the movie, they were laying down these cards to expect something really dramatic, because it had been dramatic the whole time and very character driven. because it had been character driven the whole time.
Oh yeah.
And what we got was a transformer and a video game fight that I was checking my watch to see when it was over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had literally seen this scene in Iron Man. This exact
With
scene.
Jebediah and
Obadiah.
Obadiah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was 5 years ago, and they
Yeah.
did it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think the whole thing, I was so expecting, like, this sort of Kubrick-esque, like, Logan's walk. And, you know, when we see that, like, fortress in the pamphlet in the beginning, I totally knew, okay, that's where we're ending up.
Right.
And it was like, that looked kind of scary in that pamphlet. Like, I was like, wow, like, it was spooky and kind of
Foreboding.
ominous. And
Yeah.
and instead of it being, like, you know, like a really creepy place...
Like Striker's base or something.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it turned into a cartoon base, you know, like, you know, exactly. So, and I was I was kind of envisioning in my mind where all of this was going, because the movie was telling me that's where this is going, is that he's going to slowly walk into some, you know, very kind of Japanese but high-end lair in this fortress, and it's going to, you know, the camera's going to dolly slow like in Kubrick films, and it's going to one-point perspective, and there he is, Yoshida, and he's sitting there, and he's I hadn't seen the trailer, so I didn't see Silver Samurai, and I had no expectation of this Transformer appearing.
Okay.
And I really just thought that what Mangold was going to do was finally give us sort of more of a kind of leaning on the Dark Knight end of a villain, of this actually scary villain in this actually scary fortress.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, it was just a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. The ending is really lets down the whole film, because it's so, for how loud and actionist it was nothing. It just like,
well,
Yep.
I don't know.
was-
I would say there are certain aspects of it that were entertaining to watch.
yeah, I guess. I mean, like, the whole movie, like, could just be subtitled "Wolverine gets his bone claws back." I mean, like,
Right.
well,
right.
Which are gross,
see,
by the way.
Yeah, they are gross.
they look exactly what I expected them to
See,
be.
now I love that, because the whole thing, like, you know, obviously they've kind of reneged on that, because in the original 2 X-Men movies, they were supposed to be just metal knives that were, like, put into his arms. And then when we get to X-Men Origins, he has the bone claws.
Well, he doesn't. It was Sabretooth that had.
No, he had bone claws.
Does he?
Yes. In Origins, he had bone claws, and so it's kind of like, oh, so that like perfectly shaped adamantium is like over his bones, but it didn't really look like it could be. But the way that they did it in this is like, okay, I see how that can work now.
They made it thicker at the top too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
And him losing his claws should have been way more of a big moment. Like, he should have been tortured. We should have felt his pain about it. It should have been like a big deal. And instead, it was just an action move. It was one beat in a choreography.
One really interesting beat that I did really like about that is when the Silver Samurai was going to cut off his claws in that scene. It was very reminiscent of a ritual beheading, or not a ritual beheading, but when someone is defeated, it's honorable to have them cut off your head.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that. It was very like a very traditional Japanese defeat, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that imagery I enjoyed, but the rest of the scene was just like generic and
Yeah, and I think like Mangold wanted it was like almost he was in denial throughout the first 2/3 of the film that he had to make a comic book movie for Marvel Corporation,
Right.
re Disney. And so like basically I felt like the suits came in at the end and it's like, okay, we need a Transformer in this.
Right.
And we need a lizard, because, you know, it's like it just felt like it was all contrived and not dramatic. And then when we finally this whole like false card of he's a robot and then, oh no, he's actually Yoshida. Like, well, we all knew that, so why didn't you play that up? And why didn't Logan and Yoshida have an actual dramatic conflict during the fight, but the fight was more about their character conflict and how far back they've gone, all their history that they have, and what their bond that they forged in that well during Nagasaki, what that meant.
Right.
Instead, we just get a robot.
No, and I kept hoping that the film would kind of have like there would be another level to it. There would be this whole other layer of storytelling and character work, and the film really doesn't deliver that at all.
I don't know if I'd say that. I
don't think it really does. I think you're giving the film too much credit from that standpoint, Joe.
But it doesn't deliver it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It was a really disappointing ending.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about this though, like within itself, there's so many things that don't make sense because we've got the Silver Samurai who has his adamantium sword, who he can heat up, which is true to the comics. The Silver Samurai, his power is that he can, sort of like Gambit, he can charge his katana. Okay. So they did that, which is interesting. If you're going to go the Transformer route, that's interesting. Okay, he can heat up the blade. Okay, well, we get that moment where
Wolverine is holding it.
Wolverine picks up the sword, and he's like, "Oh, two hands," which is a callback to B earlier, but like that doesn't make sense. How does he?
It's
he
just
know
the sword itself, I guess.
How does he know how to charge it? Like
it implies there's some kind of supernatural connection to heat up the sword, but
I thought that was so stupid.
You have to stop and think and figure out. Oh, okay, it must just be the sword needs two hands.
It's mechanical.
I don't know.
It's like one of the. Yeah, you're totally right. It's one of those weird things that takes you out of the moment of the drama, and it just doesn't make any sense.
It's like they tried to fit in the comic book idea of him having a sword that heats up. Where just like it doesn't make sense, and just kind of like shoehorning
fan servicing.
Yeah, just kind of shoehorning the whole like Silver Samurai into the whole story. Just really doesn't like. At the end of the day, it doesn't make sense for the movie or the story that was being told.
And Yoshida ultimately ends up being like Peter Wayland, right?
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah, exactly. He's just trying to,
which is a cliche. I mean,
at least we got an old guy playing an old guy.
Old rich man wants to live forever.
Well, yeah, but see, and it wasn't true to the character because why would he just hate his granddaughter all of a sudden? Like he just becomes total evil guy at the end. Is like, well, I'm just gonna kill my granddaughter because she doesn't matter anymore. Because
he becomes just as two-dimensional as Viper was.
Right, and the thing that doesn't make sense is that like they set up that he was really thankful for Logan for saving him during
and really just wants
Japanese
to drain
bombings.
his power. Yeah,
and like it's just like, oh well, you know what?
He should be like conflicted about it.
Well, no, it shouldn't even have been him to begin with. It should,
true,
like
that's
because
true.
like. This should have been like a huge life-altering experience.
Yeah.
Where, like, he is so thankful for everything he's got, and he's, like, a really, generous guy, and his company does great things.
His son should have been the guy.
Yeah, if somebody saves me when an atom bomb goes off, like, 200 yards away, I'm probably going to, be true to that person for the rest of my life.
Right.
Like...
Also, this guy is, like...
It just doesn't make sense. So, like, I don't know if they would have just made him... angry about losing the war and angry about defeat and the idea of Sobaku and the idea of death and just angry about that and having reasons at all for turning and seeking immortality other than I don't want to die.
Right.
I
think all those thoughts are really great, and it would have been such a richer film experience if those had been in the text of the film, and unfortunately, I mean, they weren't. And it's a failing of Mangold. It's a failing of the screenwriters to imbue the film with that.
Right. There definitely could have been a subplot where he was like, almost angry at Logan for saving him or something like that, where he like. You kind of, there's something that he's angry at Logan instead of like
the honorable thing. I mean, it's honorable to commit.
Seppuku, you're right.
Yeah, seppuku. So it's like if Logan would have stopped that would have disrupted his honor. That could have been the start of this whole idea of reattaining honor, and stealing stealing back life, since Logan gave him, his life when he wanted to die, and Logan wants to die. So, they could have done things with that, and just totally skipped it.
And there could have been a nice bookend where perhaps the character is going to commit seppuku again, and Wolverine says something to the effect of, "I'm not going to stop you this time." That would have been a really rich bookend, I think.
Oh, and it would have been true to the character because, we have moments like that in this movie, even where he's pretty ruthless, you know?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
that would be interesting. But
Absolutely.
the other thing with like the heating up of the sword that didn't make sense in this movie was when they're like draining his powers.
Okay.
Like, okay.
That was kind of weird too.
Oh yeah, I love how he had this like perfectly mechanically designed system to
see-
just jab into his.
It was like designed exactly for that scene and
Yeah.
nothing
Well,
else.
no, because it would have worked. They had him like strapped into that thing, and it would have worked there. The whole
Right,
the
but
whole,
why
that
was that built into
Well,
the
it's
suit
just
of
great
armor?
that they had to build
Yeah.
a robot power suit to extract his
Well,
immortality
true.
instead
True,
of just
true.
some machine.
Right.
You know?
Yes, but aside from all that, that's fine. Like, okay, what I was talking about is when they're actually draining his powers, like Yoshida becomes young.
Right, there should have been like
What?
almost like a video game, like you see where Wolverine's
Their
like,
life bars?
his life force is draining, and
Right.
you see his gaining, and he starts glowing, and
But
he does like
why? Logan's power, like he would just be prevented from aging. Like he wouldn't turn into the 20-year-old version
Right.
of himself. Yes, I mean that was an interesting effect where they transitioned between the two actors.
I thought it was kind of bad CGI personally.
Okay, but I mean it was just interesting that they had both of the actors there.
Right.
So aside from that, like what are the reasons? Like it didn't make sense. Like why would he get young? And then when Logan gets freed from the device, he turns old again. What?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, that-
another thing they could have done, like the you know how they kind of showed the sword fighting training that was going on in the mansion when he first got there.
Yeah. And he's like,
Well,
that
that
guy's
could have
good.
implied that the elder Yoshida had been doing that throughout his lifetime, and so when he would have regenerated into a young self, and instead of having this power suit, it was just a machine. They didn't even do any cheesy crap like that. Then young Yoshida picks up that power sword that can cut through adamantium.
Yeah,
you know,
he
like-
should just say that this sword is made of adamantium.
Yeah,
Just the sword could be.
yeah,
Yeah.
And then it would have been a much more personable conflict than
Right.
it was. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Ready to go? Final thoughts?
Well, before that, let's discuss the mid-credit scene real quick.
Oh, right.
That kind of sets up Days of Future Past. Very, very smart of them to have included that in this.
I was so
to
surprised.
gin up excitement for it. Frankly, I thought it was great. It was great seeing Ian McKellen again. Great seeing Patrick Stewart again. One of my favorite actors of all time.
Not in like fake CG young.
Right, it's
whatever.
great to just see Patrick Stewart as Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen as Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
And Joe and I talked about this after we got out of the theater, but I don't think they're retconning The Last Stand. I think that the whole film very much acknowledges The Last
Yeah,
Stand.
it definitely does.
Certainly with the death of Jean Grey, and also Logan thinks it's weird that Magneto has his powers back, and it's even weirder that Xavier's alive.
Right.
So Wolverine, even though, the film would appear to retcon that, hey, Magneto has his powers back, Xavier is alive, the fact that Wolverine acknowledges that it's weird, acknowledges that The Last Stand happened.
Yeah, it does.
think.
It does mess up the Singer continuity, so to speak.
Right, and I think, we can all applaud that it does, but it's great that those two characters are kind of reset to status quo, because those status quos are so rich.
Yeah, and I think that the movie does really kind of bridges the gap that we can continue on after the Ratner disaster, so to speak.
Yeah.
The Ratner disaster.
The Singer continuity, the Ratner disaster.
Yeah, well, I mean, because it honestly it acknowledges it, but it doesn't linger on it.
Yes.
So it just
and
says,
it
hey,
does
this
what
is
it can to make things right.
It just said, hey,
Yeah.
this thing happened. We're not
Elephant
going to
in the
mention.
room, we all know it.
Yeah, it's like the drunk uncle. We kind of acknowledge it exists, but don't really linger on it. So.
Right.
I love the scene though, and it was pretty long.
Yeah, for an after credit scene, I mean, it was a good almost 2 minutes.
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's actually some plot within it.
There's dialogue and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting. I think it just sets up the next movie really, really well.
Yeah.
So-
and it doesn't really have much to do with this movie.
It is literally, other than I was expecting him.
He's
to
flying back.
Right, I was expecting him to say where he was going to, he was going to go to Connecticut or whatever the original.
Yes, so did I. Yeah. I thought that's what he was going to say too.
Oh,
And they're all on film with the TSA. at this point doing their little meeting. So,
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
smart move.
Yeah, I kind of felt like though that Logan kind of would have taken it upon himself to reform the X-Men, and because he kind of finds his purpose at the end of this movie.
Right.
I felt like that they would fly back to the United States, specifically the East Coast.
And she asked him, "Where do you want to go?" And he's just, "I don't know, just wherever."
No,
I thought he would have said like
he should have
Connecticut
said
or wherever.
he should have said straight up that he wanted to go to the Xavier Institute or whatever.
I think that would have been great.
Or like it says something to the fact like, well, I never finished college. Maybe I should return to university or something like that.
So something, there would have been a great opportunity there for a really clever line. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But
when like where do you want to go? Up, and after that, I don't know.
Right.
There should have been the movie
we need
Up
to know.
playing on the
We have to go somewhere. We have to tell the pilot something. What do you want to say?
I don't know. Just
you're just being a dick, Logan.
Yeah, just fly until the fuel runs out. I can survive the crash.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
She's like, fuck that. There's on a parachute. Yeah. But, I mean, yeah, I think there was definitely a missed opportunity there at the end, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, now are we done?
Yeah.
Final thoughts? Go ahead, Neal.
I'm going to give this movie a 7.5 out of 10.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. I think that the ending really drags it down. Some of the characters, like Viper, really just seem out of place in this movie. But other than that, it's a good movie. I don't think it reaches into great. It's not the best X-Men movie we've seen.
Somewhere in the middle for you.
I'd honestly even put like First Class above this movie.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's good. It's a good movie. 7.5.
All right.
Yeah, my score for this film is a 6.
That's not as low as I thought.
I'm just thoroughly nonplussed by it. I mean, 6 is the same score that I gave The Bourne Legacy, which is another film which I just kind of felt nothing toward.
Sure.
I mean, I don't
think it's actively bad.
I don't like the Wolverine, and I also don't dislike it. I think it is just thoroughly mediocre, and considering that it's coming from a director like James Mangold, we deserve more than that, I think.
Yep.
And I think that's really too bad. And also I think it's not a very memorably scored film, which that's also a shock to me because I love Marco Beltrami. I think he's probably one of my 3 favorite composers. And so to get, for my money, a score that is just completely anonymous, I think that was really a shame, and I was expecting more from Marco Beltrami in this than we got. So let down by Mangold, let down by Beltrami. For me, the biggest thrill I had in this was seeing James Mangold kind of process the climax of Return of the Jedi. At the climax, this was also, kind of continue my point that I kind of made earlier. It is also kind of rich getting to see Yoshida in that suit, this old man, because that is so similar to seeing certainly Vader in the Vader suit at the end of Return of the Jedi. Visually, it's very similar. Seeing, Anakin, I should say, kind of once the Vader helmet comes off. So I think there are some interesting parallels between this and Return of the Jedi, and I have to think that those were conscious on some level, because Mangold is a director who would have been influenced by that, to be sure. So that's all I'm saying. But yeah, just thoroughly nonplussed by it. I certainly am looking forward, though, to X-Men Days of Future Past. So
that's true,
I think that will probably be an improvement over this, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. So, but for this, I'm at a 6 out of 10.
I'm at a 7.5 with Neal. I think that it is a pretty good movie. Like I said with my dice roll, I'm definitely relieved that this was not another disappointing Wolverine movie. And I don't hate X-Men Origins, but it's just kind of like, dumb
and
blockbuster.
one thing I will say is that I was probably more entertained by X-Men Origins Wolverine. Because
God.
I have to say,
I think it's bad. I think it's actively bad.
It is actively bad, to be sure, but
it's funny bad.
It is funny bad, and I certainly never have come close to falling asleep during that movie as I did during this. So that just has to be said.
Well, that's before you got your narcolepsy, though.
Whatever, but either way, I think that this is probably a better movie. But I did never fall asleep during the prior film, so I just have to say that.
I think this is definitely by far a better movie. I think this is a better movie than X-Men 3. It falls short of the first 2 X-Men and X-Men First Class, but I think it's pretty good. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I definitely don't think it's a failure. I think that the first 3/4 of it is really pretty great stuff, and I was really into it with all the character moments and everything that was going on. But when it turns into Transformers at the end, and it's just like, I don't understand like how they arrived at that decision.
They ran out of the writing juice. And...
Yeah, but like with the movie that they were making, I just don't understand how they arrived at that. Like it literally just totally switches gears, and it's just like boardroom decision, Transformer, flashing swords and stuff, and like what is going on with this? But I was just relieved. I guess that's what I would say. You know, I was hoping for something better, but I enjoyed it overall.
I'm going to give this film a 6.5 out of 10. I think that I consider Marvel films pretty disposable. I mean, they make a lot of money, but I think they're largely forgettable, whereas like Dark Knight is such a groundbreaking film that just happens to be about comic book heroes. And to me, nobody's beaten that. And I don't exactly think that at all. They were trying to. But I think that at this day, you know, after we've had Dark Knight, after we've had, you know, the Avengers, and we've kind of done that, you know, I think now, is this the superhero film we deserve? And I think Mangold made a genuine effort to give us that in the first 2/3 of the film. And then, just as Joe says, it just falls apart into boardroom design of what they need to create as a product to satisfy all markets from their focus testing. And it just is such a catastrophic letdown for me that it was like I was on board the train. I wanted this film to pay off. I was genuinely engaged and excited by Mangold's direction, by the script, by the acting, all the way until the end. And because they didn't pay it off in the end to any of those things, and they totally switched gears, I consider the film just kind of, it negates the entire film. It's not like I can go back and rewatch the film now and expect a better experience, because I know now that all of that awesomeness is leading up to nothing. Yeah. And, you know, it's not the superhero film, even on Marvel standards, which is a little more pulpy than, you know, Nolan, obviously, but it's not the superhero film we deserve, and by now it could have been. And I think that's what Mangold was trying to do, and that's why it's such a disappointment.
Yeah.
No, I think so. I mean, we're certainly at a point where we do need to be going in different directions with our superhero movies, I think, or we are just going to risk the whole industry kind of collapsing.
It's the same thing every time. Like we said, you know, the Silver Samurai, it was the Iron Man fight, you know? Like, it was, you know, they keep recycling these tropes, and everything just feels like so kind of, there isn't a seriousness to the battles that take place and the characters and sort of the tolls on that. And if it is attempted, it's done in a glib way, or it's done in a way that just falls flat in the end. So, yeah.
We done?
We're done.
I think so.
Check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/oopsallmovies and visit our website at oopsallmovies.com. And don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast in iTunes. I'm Joe Woody, at Joe Woody on Twitter.
I'm Neal Lewis, at Astromonaut.
And I'm Steve Clark, at Steve Clark Bar.
And thanks again to Xander for joining us this week.
Thank you. I'm Xander Davis live on Twitter, and you can check out my indie game project at cidergame.com.
And Astrogun.
And astrogun.com. That's my studio.
If you'd like to message the show, we are oopsallmovies@gmail.com and at oopsallmovies on Twitter. And until next time, don't forget to practice proper movie theater etiquette, because ain't nobody got time for that. Bye.